Sigue en sintonía de nuestra programación.
Está empezando el show del doctor Roy Aranda, donde abordaremos temas sobre separación niños de padres, casos de violencia, traumas con los indocumentados, cómo resistir ante tiempos de pandemias. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus propias preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
It's the last show of the year for myself and my good friend and consultant, Dr. Peter Canaris. I think it's probably good that we're doing it a little bit early because it gives us an opportunity to focus on some of the concerns that both of us have and that, obviously many people in society have during this time of the year, holidays, traveling, continued concerns about issues pertaining to the virus and the news about the ongoing spiking still of COVID. That's really not good news. More bad weather along the way. So it's probably not a bad idea to do that and to cover and to go over some basic concepts about being ready and staying safe and what to do to maximize your safety as well as your enjoyment over this time period. And then moving into 2023, more or less, what can we look at? So, vamos a hacer un show hoy sobre el tema de los acontecimientos del año pasado. We're going to talk about some of the things that stood out for both of us, for both Peter and myself this past year, and focus un enfoque en temas de protección, being safe, like I said, and then moving towards 2023, where there's obviously a lot of uncertainty. We don't know. We really don't know. A lot of uncertainty. So we'll see where we go with that. Como siempre, as always, the show is being recorded on YouTube Live, and está grabado en YouTube. Y efectivo ya mañana, by tomorrow, there will be recordings on several platforms. It'll be on Facebook. It'll be on Vimeo. It'll be also on Tribuna TV's site, and you'll have to do it under my hosting site. So it should be easily accessible. I encourage people. Doy el permiso y quisiera ver que ustedes, los interesados, those of you who are interested, we have a lot of slides. So I encourage you the viewers, take photographs today of anything that might catch your eye, or wait for the actual recording, la grabación, and then you can take screenshots. So there's a lot of material going over it fairly quickly and just having a back and forth dialogue. Some of it is material we've covered before, and other stuff is going to be, newer in terms of preparing for next year. So without further ado, I wanted to start with the first slide. Por favor, Oscar, don Oscar, ¿me puedes poner la? ¿Ya está? Okay. So here's the title. Here comes 2023, out of the dark into the light. Obviously today, December 15, I'm the host and consultant, and my guest, Peter Canaris. I have no idea how many times I've been on the show, but this show has been in existence for 4 years and 4 months. 4 years, 4 months. So basically, just to give you a heads up, a little brief introduction to what we will be doing. My dear friend, Peter, I had to come out and say that you're my dear friend. I had to take it out of the more professional realm into a more personal realm, especially this time of the year. My dear friend consultant, Dr. Peter Canaris, and I will bid farewell to 2022 looking at some of the highlights of the year. And there's so many, we're really giving you only a handful. And welcome the new year, 2023, with safety precautions, as I mentioned, over the holiday season, suggestions for positive growth and change next year. When you think things are bad and expect things could become worse, there always is a lit candle at the end of the tunnel. Peter, I got tired of saying there's light at the end of the tunnel, so I changed it. I want it to be more original. There's a lit candle at the end of the tunnel. Plus, the lit candle is sort of, there's always a possibility it'll get blown out. It's delicate. It's more delicate than a light. As long as you pay your electricity bill, you'll have that light. With the candle, you don't know. We hope that after today's show, the last of 2022, we can place enough tools in your hands to help you take more control of your life, shape your goals, and help you find a way towards achieving them. We don't in any way pretend that we're going to give you all these magical formulas. You have to put some effort and work into it. But Peter and I have always had this positive outlook, glass half full type of mentality. And I hope that's come through, Peter, throughout the many, many shows you've been a guest. And I know that every time I always try to emphasize to the viewers that there's always something that a viewer can do to be more empowered. I want to be more of a voice to the disenfranchised, a voice to the voiceless, a voice to people who are more silenced, and give them, myself through my voice, more of that, yes, you can, and yes, you can talk about it, and don't be afraid. I've got your back, so to speak. I'm dedicating the show to all viewers, to all my guests, friends of the show, collaborators, and to the dedicated people on the production of the show. So towards that end, reconozco a Oscar, el mago, behind the show. Oscar's my producer and the magic behind the show. Don Oscar, si quieres dar algún saludito. Careful in health, money, and this time of the year, may you have a wonderful, he didn't say blessed, but I'm adding that, a holiday. Also to Emilio, who is the director. I want to give a shout out to Emilio also. Basically, he's the gift behind the show, in the sense that it was his creation, coming up with the idea of having an internet-based TV show. And I'm not the only one. There are many on Tribuna TV. If you actually go to Tribuna TV and you take a look, you'll see that there are many, many internet TV shows that are there. And I have a hosting site that you see my photo. So all of my shows are actually archived. Today, Peter serves me. It's probably number 83.
Yes. Yes.
And also Ezequiel, I want to give a shout out to Ezequiel, who is in El Salvador, one that prepares the video promo and is intimately involved in the production of the show as well. So I wanted to give a big shout out to these three musketeers, okay? So, por favor, don Oscar, ¿puedes sacar el primer slide y ponme el slide número 2? So just briefly, looking back at 2022, so many things, terrible, bad, good, and wonderful. Briefly, natural disasters, more than our share of hurricanes. For instance, Fiona and Ian, Fiona in Puerto Rico, Ian in Florida, and also coming up north as well that affected states. We had more than our fair share of tornadoes, heat waves, wildfires, droughts, floods, the overall impact of global warming. That, obviously it's affecting not just us, not just in the United States, but global. Viruses, COVID, we were dealing with the new COVID infection, 8.5. I hear that there's probably now the BA.6 now. The flu, the monkeypox virus, West Niles was still out there. Polio reared its ugly head again. RSV, which is the respiratory illness with children. Right now, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that most hospitalizations now are pediatric children.
Pediatric, yes. Yes.
Violence. I mean, how do you get away with violence? I just don't know what else to say about violence. There have been so many. There's so many instances of violence that it would be impossible, show of an hour and 15 to post all of them. So I do hope that the viewers don't take it personal if I missed out. I mean, I only put 4 here, but there's so many. There's so many. These are some that affected me very much, affected others, and of course, there's many others. I mean, when I hear these things, bad events happening at the subway, bad events happening on subway platforms. I mean, when I hear these kinds of things, it just breaks my heart. Buffalo was horrible. Uvalde, oh my God, brought back all the memories of Sandy Hook, and I couldn't believe it. I was teary-eyed. It's hard for me not to talk about it, or to look at both, or to consider the parents, or to look at the crosses that are out, and not have tears in my eyes. It's like very hard. Club Q reminded me of the Pulse incident in Florida several years ago. I believe, if memory serves, it was around 2017-ish. I hope I'm mistaken, that forgive me. But all these memories and all the hatred that we're seeing against different religious groups, different people who are of different sexual orientations, sexual beliefs, religious beliefs, colors, cultural identifications, and of course Ukraine. We're not in Ukraine, but Ukraine is here. It's here in our news every day. It's here in our photographs that we see all the time. It's here from people who come from Ukraine. It's here from people who have been. It's come from survivors. It's come from relief workers. We see the horrific events and pictures nonstop. So Ukraine is here, and to me, it's one of the major, biggest things of my life, and certainly of this past. And of course, not to leave behind good stuff. I think that this vaccine for BA.5 is wonderful. You know how infectious BA.5 is. My understanding is in an elevator ride for 2 seconds with somebody who's contaminated, that's enough to get it. It's not as deadly as some of the more original viruses, but boy, it is way super contagious. The space program, Artemis, what was that, like November 17, I believe?
Yeah, November.
They knew you, and they knew they had to give it a Greek name. So,
yeah, I was glad to hear that. Yeah,
we have all these wonderful photos, from the bar. I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted to see, after such a long hiatus, that there's some emphasis and renewed interest, and the science behind it is amazing. The job openings that this is going to create, and the interest in schools for students and all that. I'm so delighted. Soccer, well, U.S. didn't win, but in my heart, U.S. was a winner. We did very well. I'm absolutely delighted. And after being really the new kid on the block, we are doing wonderfully well. And acts of human kindness and compassion, to me, that is something that falls under the realm of the wonderful. So, por favor, Oscar, back a slide. We're gonna just share a couple of this a little bit more, but I just want to show, por favor, ponme el número 3. The reason that I say something that was, and I use the word wonderful, is this. We people, society, have an amazing way of coming to the help of people. These are helping hands following the hurricane devastation in Florida. When I did the show, I looked at photos and I was amazed to see we had a combination of rescue workers, as you could see. We had people who were just like um, neighbors or people in the area reaching out and helping. So these are the photos. I provided a total of 6 photos. You can see you have, like, on the top left, there's what looks like, people that are not formal rescue workers helping. Right, you actually have people with the jackets. They're more in the line of rescue workers. Underneath on the left, it looks to me like that's somebody possibly connected with the military that's providing assistance. The one on the right, people in the they're coming out with the boat trying to rescue people that were stranded. Those are regular people. Underneath on the left, a person with his dog. I'm an animal lover. I mean, I had to put that down. And the one on the right, they have a combination of a rescue worker and probably a regular civilian with a baby. So, Peter, that's what I mean by the wonderful. So, Oscar, puedes sacar el slide. Maybe you can focus a little bit on yours. I know that I mentioned many. Uvalde continues to bring tears to my eyes, but it also brought flashbacks and memories of Sandy Hook. And yesterday, December 14th, was the 10th anniversary of Sandy Hook. And just to share with the viewers, 10 years ago yesterday, I was in court upstate preparing to testify in a forensic case. I was outside the courtroom because they would not allow you inside the courtroom if you're a witness, an expert witness, and you have to testify. So I was outside, probably lunch or so break, waiting to be called in. And I heard it. I heard what happened. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was like, did I hear this thing correctly? And it was so hard for me, Peter, so hard for me to maintain a focus on my testimony. I had to really struggle to put the emotions aside and just focus cognitively on what my job was there that day, to focus on the trial. But I was heartbroken and driven to tears when I heard it. And I'm reasonably sure that there were others there that heard it. Keep in mind that 10 years ago, we didn't have the technology we have now. So it's not like we had, this moment, texting and all these wonderful ways of communicating. Although we did have a lot of, we did have good phones and ample communication. So I know that you had something with it, to say about it. So let me let you take over now and focus on some of the highlights for 2022.
Yeah, Roy, it's interesting because with Sandy Hook 10 years ago, my memory is I had been asked to come on an interview on television, and which I'd done many times on many different topics, but so often it occurred to me that so often when the media reaches out to a psychologist, we go on because something terrible's happened. And we're asked to comment upon the effects that it's had on the survivors or in the public at large. And that's, basically how it was for me 10 years ago when we were confronted by that awful tragedy. And so many of the events that you were reviewing before, the violent events, and contrasting that with, what we're calling the good stuff, from the space program to the soccer, to people helping each other during natural disasters. I think of the contrast between hatred and hope. And very often the hope is related to some sort of an act of kindness, where people are extending themselves, sometimes even risking themselves, putting themselves out physically, financially, and other ways to help other people. who've gone through a difficult time, and that's really where the hope lies. We're complicated creatures, and we have both of those sides. The capacity for hatred, which can then become violent, but also kindness that instills hope. And I'm thinking that what we want to bring in this new year, and one of the reasons I so enjoy always the last show of the year with you on your program, is that we get to look ahead with that hope, and to extend kindness into the year that's coming up.
Peter, there is no doubt in my mind that acts of kindness, good things, good people prevail and are way, 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 way more than people that are wrongdoers or bring hatred or commit acts of violence or acts of misogyny or prejudice or stereotyping people. I'm sure that there is much, much more of the good. What's unfortunate is that the news media seems to reinforce a lot of the bad and the terrible and the awful things. And they do that by reposting over and over and over again. And you have all the different media outlets are doing it. And they do it repeatedly. And even while you're watching something on TV, you're looking at the chyrons underneath that are still giving you other pieces of bad information across the world. And if you don't have that, iPhones, all of this stuff is popping anyway, and it's not popping up that a firefighter helped a woman who was stranded on the bridge about to deliver her baby deliver a baby. You may get a mention of it, and maybe it's on page 6 in the newspaper another day, but you don't get that. And I think to an extent as well, I can understand coming from the news media, because there's always a rush to put it out. There's a financial behind it. There's also rewards that are giving. There's a big concern as well. You see everything is breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. It's not breaking news. I mean, it's breaking news the first time, and then it's not breaking news anymore. And then, it's hard to figure out. But I saw this a day ago. I saw this 2 days ago. How can it be breaking news now? But it attracts the attention of the viewer. Wow, breaking news. Let me see. I got to look at it. Breaking news. But I think to an extent, viewers are a bit complicit as well, because we seem to gravitate. We have this voyeuristic tendency, for whatever reason, to look at things that are negative, that are bad. I think there's many hypothetical reasons why, but take a look on the highway. You're driving on, say, the Long Island Expressway heading east, and there's an accident on the west side. You're gonna bumper to bumper traffic on the right side, because whoever's going past on the right side, looking at the left side to see what it is. Not that there's emergency vehicles on the right side; they're on the left side. They're looking. It's that the rubbernecking effect. I think to an extent, people say, "Well, this can't happen to me. I'm safe. I'm okay." I'm not sure what other kind of a need is satisfied, but when you're drawn to looking at blood and the gore and the muck and mire, there's just this thing inside that we are drawn to it for whatever reason. And I wish that we could focus more on what's so much more prevalent, the good in people.
Roy, to go back a moment to the point you were making before about media. And, you and I are old enough to remember how things used to be many years ago. I sometimes joke about, I've been around for the 20th century and the 21st century. And if you think of the changes in media, over that time, when we were younger, okay, there would be news for a half hour in the evening at 7 o'clock or at 11 o'clock, and it would cover stories. And that would be it, and what's happened instead over time is that where news used to be reported, now it's more opinion. And as you were alluding to before, the more controversial, the more negative, the bloodier, news has become now entertainment and a moneymaker for these broadcasting and cable organizations. And it's also now not that half hour in the evening or in the morning. It's 24-hour. Tune in and keep watching it. And then once you're pumped up, go and discuss it on social media. And now it invites that hate speech. It invites that inflaming. It invites that I'm not dealing face to face with another person, so my guard is down. I can say whatever I want to say, however hateful or however nasty, and that inflaming takes place. Well, that internet and that social media back in that 20th century, early enough, that didn't exist. So it might be a couple of folks on the corner, mouthing off and saying nasty things, but it didn't really go very far. Now it's broadcast to thousands and millions on the internet. So it's our mechanisms of communication of popular media, I think, are fueling so much of the hatred and so many of the problems that we're having. I don't mean to be all negative. It's good as well in terms of some of the wonderful things that it offers us, but we've got to find a way of reeling that in. And at the very least, as individuals, we have to start to be thinking about, all right, how do I limit my exposure? How do I begin to not get lost either online or by watching cable news, because you fall down that rabbit hole and it truly affects us.
I have so many patients who tell me that they are stressed out when they watch the news. Many of my patients, like yours, have been victims of accidents. One, for instance, who was at a gas station and there was like a shooting. And anytime that he's watching in the news things about mass shootings or incidents on subways, it just brings it back to him like he's there again. Many other patients, they're hearing subway incidents, they're hearing other stuff about COVID contaminations and who knows what. They're watching the close to it over and over and over and over again. And it takes an emotional toll. And along with the emotional toll, it affects them and brings about emotional reactions. So they become more anxious, more depressed, and behavioral reactions. So they are more inclined to want to stay in and not go out. They become more isolated. They're just not that willing to interact with others. They lose motivation. They're harboring greater feelings of despair and hopelessness and helplessness. So why bother? And for me, the task as their therapist, as their psychologist, is to try really to put a proper framing in a way that's reasonable. I tell them you have to have some idea of what's going on in the news. I mean, you need to know, for instance, if COVID is spiking again. Why? Because you need to protect yourself and be safe. You need to know that if something is going on or a tornado is heading towards you, you need to know this in the news, but you don't need to dwell on it 24/7. Get the minimum amount of consumption of the news that keeps you informed, and the rest of it, try to focus on things that are educational, maybe stuff with your children, or just entertainment, watching old flicks, old movies. There's so much that's out there also with the apps that there's no way that you can get bored. And those are my kinds of recommendations. So let's look at a little bit about the holidays. Okay, por favor, Oscar, el slide número 4. So viewers, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because, we've focused on it before and I really don't want to belabor too much about it. Again, I encourage you to take a screenshot or a photo. I called it a time for joy. Hold on. Not for everyone. Uh, there are people who are not happy this time of the year. There are people who may have mixed feelings. They may have a little bit of happiness and a little bit of not happiness. So emotions are running. And for some people, they're just not all that good. Expectations are high, financial distress, they're lonely this time of the year, had losses or separation, or sicknesses, injuries, family illnesses, loss of job, separation, and you're dealing with how do you get together with the kids, who's got them, when and how do you deliver them, and so forth. And, worrying, did mommy say something bad about me? Did daddy say something bad about me? Stress of moving, limited light exposure. I don't know how much my viewers are aware of it, but in the winter months, and if you have, you have less access to light, it's connected with a form of depression known as seasonal affective disorder. Puedes sacar el slide. Anything to add to that, Peter? Because we're going to look at some ways of coping with the holiday blues. Anything to add to that? Get into some.
Only that I'm reminded of the well-known old movie "It's a Wonderful Life," and sometimes for the holidays for people, it's not such a wonderful life, and it seems like somehow I'm being left out of the joy and the festivities, and that could be really, really tough for people when that's the expectation that's created. It's created in our culture and media, and that we could talk a little bit about how to begin to cope with that.
All right, Oscar, por favor, pon el número 5. There's a lot of stuff here, things to do. We have to change how we celebrate. So even though there's many people that are celebrating now without masks, going to restaurants, having family reunions and other things, that doesn't mean that the viruses aren't out there. I would guesstimate, Peter, that about half my patients are sick. Some of COVID, others from flu, others from colds, others from what they call
the same with me. Yeah.
They don't necessarily know. They're self-diagnosing. Sometimes they refuse to go to a doctor. They say, I'm pretty sure, blah, blah, blah. And I always encourage everybody, you've got to do a rule out. You got to rule out COVID. You got to rule out other things, strep throat, other stuff. Talk to your doctor. If you do have COVID, there are antivirals now. Why would you want to suffer? Why would you want to add that burden to yourself? There are things. There's medication, but you need to reach out to a doctor, not necessarily watch your social media or pretend that nothing happened to you. I have a number of people who pretended that it wasn't that bad, and then they said to me, "Doctor, I so wish I had listened to you because I came down with COVID." A dear family member who thought it was just the flu and didn't do anything when he remained symptomatic ended up being diagnosed with COVID. By then, it was so bad that he was hospitalized, had respiratory distress, and God bless him, unfortunately passed away. And I can't tell you, Peter, how that affected me, my wife, and our family. And that was something that had you not taken it for granted and listened to loved ones who says, no, get it checked. So to the viewers, don't assume, you cannot assume. So, quickly plan ahead, family members, to the extent that you can celebrate virtually, it exists, decorations, if you have a house outside, all of these things, greeting cards, exchanging gifts, religious services. I have many of my patients do Zoom religious services, so they're not actually going. Drives. It's a beautiful time to go for a drive and look at all the beautiful decorations. Holiday movies, like you were mentioning, photos, sharing the photos, playing games, all of these things that are on the right side, remembering people lost, donating to a cause. Puedes sacar el slide, por favor, Oscar, y pon el número 6. So 6 sort of goes with it. Strategies to cope. Okay, this is a little bit repetitive. Making plans early, including shopping. Don't wait for the last minute. I know that people are worried about the bad weather or about violence or being victims. So many, are are staying in more. They're more reluctant to go out, or their children are sick, or they're sick. They don't have the opportunity, so they're more inclined to want to do shopping through the internet, which is, obviously not as much fun as it used to be when you went out to the store and saw the things. But you have to prioritize. You have to stay safe. Remember, staying safe, keeping your family safe, keeping your children safe, keeping your loved ones safe. That's your highest priority. Okay, cutting down on activities, prioritizing, budgeting, not overspending. A lot of people, unfortunately, are overspending. Prices have gone up. Cost of gas has gone up. So I think there's some guesstimates that things are going to be more costly now. So again, you have to like work about that. Be careful, because you're going to have to repay these bills. Avoid family conflicts as much as possible. My husband's family wants me to go over there. My family wants them to go to Suffolk. My husband's family's in New Jersey. My family's in Suffolk County. We're arguing about it. It's obviously impossible to do both. We don't know what to do. So these are some of the stressors. Don't isolate yourself. We have focused, Peter and I, so much on eating healthy, sleeping healthy, taking time to rest, avoid overeat. It's reasonable to wanna have like a little drink celebration or a little toast and stuff like that. But don't rely on it as a means of escaping or to help calm down your anxiety or depression. And don't be urged or cajoled into drinking because other people are saying, "Hey, you should toast with us. What's wrong with you?" Know your limits. Enjoy yourself by all means, but know your limits. Positive things. Look for ways to have fun. Make new traditions. Refine old traditions, things that you used to do that you're not doing now. Allow time to mourn and heal if you suffered a loss. It's obviously painful. A loss this time of year. Peter, my mother passed away on December 13th. Okay, on a December, not this December 13th, on a December 13th, long time. And I was so devastated. I mean, it killed my Christmas holidays. I can't begin to tell you how long. My birthday is December 30. It ruined my birthday. I can't begin to tell you how long. I remember listening to Jose Feliciano's song Feliz Navidad, and it would bring tears to my eyes. Anytime I went out and I heard that song or I saw decorations, I mean, it was horrible. And, as years went by, I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to focus on it. And slowly but surely it turned, because on a December 30, on a December 13, many years ago, I found out that I passed my first year law school exam. I'm a psychologist, but I took a first year law school exam on December 13th. Not on December 13th, but I found out on a December 13th that I had passed, and I thought to myself, "Thanks, Mom, you were there." And I look forward to December 13th. December 13th and July 3, her birthday, are two of my favorite days of the year because it validates her life and her existence. Yeah. And I love it. I love keeping her alive that way in my memories. Obviously, asking for help, people you can find, and professionals if need be. Puedes sacar el slide, Peter. I said a mouthful, so up to you before we get into staying safe kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Roy. You mentioned about your mom and how the holidays with your mom originally made the loss that much more difficult. The association to that time of year and the pain that it would bring up. But it sounds like over time, it became a reason to celebrate her life and to remember her. For me, quite similar. I lost my father on a June 15th, right around Father's Day. And the same way at the beginning, it was very difficult because of the pain of the loss. But over time, it became a true celebration of Father's Day for me, having lost him at that time. So I can strongly identify with what you're saying. I want to go back also to comment on what when you were talking about the traditions and changing and making new traditions. Personally, what I've done as over the years as my family has changed and some of the get-togethers and the celebrations were no longer possible because of geography or losses and all of that. A new tradition that I created for myself would be to call friends and family on the holiday and to reach out and touch and wish them holiday greetings at that time and connect in that moment. Not a text or an email, but an actual call where I would speak to them, and that I'd make my calls on Christmas Day, and I'd make a bunch of calls, and if I didn't reach them, I left a message, and it became my new tradition and my way of feeling good about the holiday. Another thing to keep in mind, I think, is that I'm also reminded of the old television show Seinfeld with the holidays. And if you recall that episode where George's father made up the holiday Festivus. And part of the holiday of Festivus, which I think was really a takeoff on holiday happenings, was what he called the airing of grievances. My recommendation is do not use a holiday gathering to air grievances. It's a terrible mistake, and put those things aside for that day, and maybe you have to deal with a family member about an important issue at another time. Try to keep the holiday celebration just as a celebration and a time to be together, not to get into heavy, difficult issues, and certainly not political issues at that time. And the last point I have really is about the expectations, which really brings in the idea of the shoulds. We believe that the holiday should be a certain way, and it's actually an expectation, but a demand. And there's no reason it should be that way. We like it. We want it to be. If it can be, great. If not, we've got to make that adjustment and find a new way of experiencing the holiday, and at the very least, getting through it and pushing our way into the new year and starting fresh again.
Okay, so let's look at some safety tips and then some precautions. More generic kinds of precautions. Oscar, por favor, el número 7. ¿Ya salió? Okay. Safety tips. So some of this applies, we have inclement weather. So some of this applies more to the inclement weather and readiness for the inclement weather. But a lot of it is also applicable, when you're traveling, when by car, by plane, you're going different places, and it's more than like just travel another county that's a half an hour drive, so maybe a couple of days or whatever. So in terms of any type of a precaution where there's a risk of flooding, or heavy rain, heavy snowfall, possibility of tornado hits or hurricanes, make sure that you have a supply, flashlights, batteries. You should always have an evacuation plan. This is something that you need to do, not just anticipating the possibility of a hurricane or a tornado, but in general, bad things can happen. You can have a fire, who knows what. You need to have like an evacuation plan. Supplies, keep your supplies. If you lose power, do you have a generator? Let's say you lose power and you lose power for a couple of days. You're not going to have refrigerator. You're going to have food rotting. You may not be able to get out to make purchases. There could be that stores are closed. Who knows? So make sure that you have a supplies kit, IDs, know where they are. You don't need to have like some sort of a tragedy, disaster, or traveling to know where your IDs are, and make sure that, you know where your documents are and cash on hand. Make sure others know of your predicaments if, in fact, you are in a predicament. But even if not, you're traveling. Make sure others know that you're traveling and where and how and what flights you're going, when you do to be there, when you do to come back, and so forth, where you're staying. In other words, information. Keep the information going. If you have pets, plan for your pets if you're taking them, and plan for your pets if not. Seek help if there's special needs. Somebody, walking with a cane, wheelchair bound, needs an oxygen, has, asthma, has some sort of, COPD or medical condition that requires, very close monitoring, diabetes. So make sure that you are aware of that. If for any reason there were a need for a shelter, know where they are. Have one of those emergency radios that can be powered by winding it up, that you don't have to rely on electricity or on a battery, just winding it up. And one of those radios that specifically is for emergencies, for emergency channels. If you have medical facilities, know where you would go. I know where South Shore, I know where the hospitals in my area are. I know where all of them are, and I know which one I would want to go to. And my wife knows if anything happens to me, that's the one you're taking me to first. Similarly, urgent care. I mean, we have a lot of urgent care centers and treatment facilities that are not hospitalizations. Many people, they're not that eager to go to hospitals. They're afraid they'll get contaminated. They're afraid it'll be a long wait. Parking's going to be difficult. You might get, they're afraid that they'll get contaminated. So, I mean, I can appreciate that and understand that. So, be aware that there are places that you could go, and if you're familiar with them or you've been there before and you have a good working relationship with a particular doctor who's there, by all means, similarly, your primary care physician. Modernly, since so much can be done through telephone and Zoom and other kinds of virtual formats, it's not that difficult to stay in touch with somebody. Be wary of the environment, dangers of exposure and contamination, food rotting, things that have been left out in the electrical down power lines or electrical poles. Be aware of hazards. Okay, you could also get contaminated from them. Okay, puedes sacar ese slide, Peter. Anything to add to that? Because we're going to look at a couple of general kinds of places that have been in the news a lot, and then we'll add and move towards outlook for 2023.
Good.
Anything to add to that?
No, very thorough, I think.
All right, so puede poner por favor, Oscar, el número 8. So, dear viewers, we've covered this before, but I wanted to bring it up again because we're seeing so much violence. I mean, we're seeing synagogues hit, and we're seeing places, perform all sorts of, some facilities now are offering training, combat training, what to do and how to anticipate it. Like they have mock attackers coming, and how would you diffuse the situation? What would you do? So I'm not necessarily advocating that we want to have everybody go to one of these types of classes, because there's so much that the viewers can do to stay safe without having that formal training learning self-defense and other things. You don't need to have formal training in order to protect yourself. Watch programs, security, a lot of this information sharing, making sure that doors are closed that are not supposed to be used, accessible entrances, inspecting premises. So I don't really want to go over all of it, but in terms of people, if you are going to a place of worship, be aware of your environment, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what's there, be aware if there's a lot of people hanging out that look a little suspicious to you, not comfortable, or if there's a lot of stuff strewn on the lawn or broken bricks that could be used as weapons. Be wary. If your gut tells you that something is wrong and that maybe you should turn around or be safe, listen to it. You're better off listening to your gut than ignoring it. So there's a number of things that you can do really to enhance your own safety and protection. And I mention that now because obviously a lot of people will be going, to church or to temple or celebrating, Kwanzaa, different religious services this time of the year, and it is potentially risky. Okay, puedes sacar ese slide. Did I miss anything on that you want to emphasize? I'm going to look at schools and outside.
No, I think just as a general point, what's different now is awareness. Awareness of potential dangers that in times gone by maybe that didn't come to our minds. But in our current world, maintaining that sense of not fear, but alertness and awareness is what we really need.
There's obviously greater risk at certain times of the day, certain days of the week, and certain events. When you're having a lot of people at an event because it's a religious celebration, and you're opening the door and you have congregants that you are unfamiliar with, okay, the risk increases. I'm not saying something bad must happen, but the risk increases, and you need to be aware of that. More people, increased risk. Later at night, increased risk. Dark surroundings, increased risk. If there's money around or there's been money collected, increased risk. So those are some of the things to be wary about and be aware of. People don't look like they fit. It's hot. It's hot outside, and you have somebody wearing. Por favor, Oscar, número 9. That's not too different in the sense of lighting and security and doors that are not used closed, knowing who goes into the building, making sure that the cameras work, being aware of debris, internal kinds of things that are needed, exits that are marked. Perhaps evacuation plans, supervision of staff, maintaining ongoing contact with the community, with family, with parents, with police, with law enforcement, and with religious associations. Keep a tightly knit communication network, and consider the context again, the location of the school, what's typical for the school on that occasion, maybe for a particular get together like open school night. It's on a night. You may want to beef up the security, so or do it. So be aware of that. It's typical enough. Chances are it's not. Not if you have special events. And special things like, for instance, special events, sports events, like I just said, parent-teacher conferences, shows, proms, etc. Puedes sacar ese slide, Oscar. Anything to add to the school scenario? I want to spend a little bit more time on everyday risk in general outdoors.
Yeah, no, good to move along.
Por favor, Oscar, número 10. So this is really something that every day I think is appropriate. We need to, you need to know how to get to where it is you're going. You're traveling someplace, you need to know how to get there. You need to know alternates. You need to know in case something doesn't work, or the subway's not running, or Long Island Railroad is running, or not running, or running on a different schedule, or a combination of Long Island Railroad and buses. You need to know this. You need to stay on top of it. Awareness. Be alert and observant about you. Peter, how observant is someone who is on the subway or on the Long Island Railroad with iPhone open, texting away the entire ride?
This is one of my greatest concerns, because what I've come to observe, in our daily life, but in particular with patients and people that we treat and people they see in their relationships or with the children, we are so into our screens that when it comes to issues of risk management outside, if you're walking, if you're traveling, my goodness, even in the car, I've seen people on their screens at all times. So what does that mean? At best, you've got split attention. You're into the screen and you're sort of trying to peripherally pay attention to what's going on around you. You're going to miss a lot. If there's a danger there, whether it's tripping or some harm that could befall you by someone interested in wrongdoing, you will be that much more vulnerable because you will not have your awareness and your attention available to you. So use the phones. They're wonderful in many ways. We rely on them in so many ways, but you've got to limit them, and particularly if you're in situations outside, you've got to use them in a very limited, discrete way, because it will reduce your attention and your awareness.
You need to keep in mind, if your phone has become like the most important thing in your life and you were to lose it, you would die. You're probably relying on it too much. If it's with you all the time, no matter what, and you get panicky if you don't know where it is. If the last thing that you or going to bed is to look at your phone, first thing you do when you get up is to look at your phone, chances are you're relying on it too much.
Roy, I often, I deal with a lot of couples where the phone actually has become a problem for them and creating fights or one partner feeling that they're not getting attention. I really encourage people, they typically, especially with iPhones, will send you a weekly report on your usage, but you could check on that every day if you want to. And it really tells you the total time that you're spending on the phone, and it breaks down where you're putting your time on the phone. Well, what device, what app you're devoting your time. And it really is sort of a scorecard that allows you to evaluate, hey, do I want to be spending these many hours on my phone? Increase my awareness and maybe make some modifications and see, well, next week, maybe it can look different. And maybe that will have positive implications and effects in my life.
Peter, even if you are not distracted in a car because of your cell phone, if you take your eyes off of the road and you're traveling at 60 miles per hour, that means that in 1 minute, you have covered 1 mile. In half a minute, you've done half a mile. In 15 seconds, in 15 seconds, you've done the quarter mile, okay, in 15 seconds. You can continue to reduce that to a matter of seconds and find out how many feet you traveled that you had your eyes off of the road. And let me tell you something. That's more than enough to go off the road, kill somebody, hit something, and be in a major accident.
Roy, I have treated families, a particular family where a family of four, both the mother and the father were killed because they had to be pulled over to the side of the road. There was a flat tire. They were on the side of the road. The mother and the father were killed, leaving their two children because an individual was on his phone and wound up losing track of where he was. He shifted from the left-hand lane all the way over to the shoulder, causing that accident and killing those two parents. So those two children wound up being raised by their grandmother.
Incredible. Moving on, limit number of items and packages. So, aside from the fact it's going to be difficult to carry, you're a risk. And if you're elderly or you have, cane, or you have like some sort of an impediment, some sort of physical challenge, you definitely are at an increased risk. Money, take only what you need with you, and by all means, don't flash it around. You probably don't need much more than one credit card when you're outside, like a generic credit card or a good credit card to cover most of your expenses were you to have any need. You don't need a million credit cards to take with you. Make sure your phone's charged. You'd be surprised how many people they say, oh God, I got to go charge my phone. My phone's like, why is your phone dying? Like you should have charged it before you left. It's not bad if you have one of those apps that gives you a panic button. They're not that difficult to get. You need to know, someone should know where you are, know the area, the routes, obstructions, closing, examine places you enter, lighting, time of day, public gatherings, peak times. Public gatherings are going to be very different than 3 in the morning, in some street and, in some remote area, so keep that in mind. You need a crisis intervention plan, so you should know ahead of time what you would do if you're in trouble. You shouldn't have to think about it. What would you do? You got a phone number. You got your phone. You have people on speed dial and so forth. Keep an eye on vehicles that look like they may be losing control. They're going too fast for the area. Be aware of presence of law enforcement and who can assist you. Obviously, plain clothes you won't know. But if you see people, then at least you know where to go, who to go to. If you don't see anybody, you'll be wary of that as well. Like I said, trust your gut. If something doesn't seem right, don't ignore it. Puedes sacar el slide. So let's move on to outlook for 2023. Okay, Peter? Because I want to spend 20 minutes on that before yanks me. So, Oscar, por favor, el número 11. So, ¿se ve? Okay. Peter, what about 2023? What on earth is this? And my question to you is, what on earth is that?
Looks a little bit like the floor of my bedroom when I get up in the morning. I don't think it's that. I don't actually know.
Well, guess what? Neither do I. It was something that I got off of the television and I modified the settings and it came up with this. And I have no idea what all those different colors and shapes and empty areas, I have no idea.
Makes for a good Rorschach.
Yeah, good reason why I don't know this. Okay, so por favor, Oscar, número 12. Número 12. It's okay, el 12. It's okay not to know what that was. But here's the thing. What we don't know it's a possibility it will harm us. It might not. But we can be ready either way, in case we're anticipating problems at work next year, or we won't get a raise that we were hoping to get next year, or we're planning to move, but the move has been delayed, or repairs on a house because, we had an issue and insurance kicked in. The contractors are taking forever to do it, or I lost my primary care physician and now I have to find somebody else. The distance is further. Some members of my family have moved and so forth. So it doesn't mean you can't be ready for it. So some self-control steps that we talked about, face the problem. What's the possibility? If you can anticipate ahead of time, like I just gave you a whole bunch of things. If you can anticipate ahead of time, by all means do that. What are your needs? What is it that you need for next year? Do you need to get that fourth vaccine, the BA.5 vaccine? Do you need to get your kids vaccinated? Do you need to move? Do you need to relocate? What are some of the things you need to do? What is meaningful to you? And put that into 2023. What are some short-term and long-term goals for 2023? Typically, the short-term goals might be more 3 months, mid-term goals more year, long-term, year and up. So I think you can roll all the short-term and long-term goals into 2023. Prioritize, what's more important to you for next year. Plan ahead. Try to come. It may change. It's a work in progress. It's not something that's cast in stone. Be aware of what your strengths are. What are your coping skills? Learn new coping skills if you need them. If you're lacking in certain areas, educate yourself. Invest some effort into strengthening them. Strengthen those areas that are good so that you can rely on them even more. What supports do you have? What's out there that you can rely on as a source of support? Education, self-improvement, routines. Routines are always good to have. Keep in mind that can change. They can evolve over time. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have them or throw them out the window. Consider your routines and modify them as needed. What enjoyable activities are available to you presently? What enjoyable activities that you have in the past? What enjoyable past activities, realistically, reasonably, you can re-engage in? What new kinds of enjoyable activities, things that maybe you put off doing, or you've never done, or people have recommended? There's so much that's out there now, and so much that's available with technology now, that there's a wealth of material that's available. Don't dwell on the negatives. We've spoken a lot about this, Peter and I. Focus on positive changes, even if there are bad things in your life and so forth. It happens. You don't have to focus on the past. Be forward focusing. Again, re-emphasizing taking care of yourself, healthy eating, avoiding excessive alcohol. Substances, if it's medication, be careful. You can abuse substances that are prescribed, and obviously illegal. I'm going to say don't do it. Avoid excessive caffeine. That also can put you a little bit on hyper mode. Rest. Make sure you get enough sleep, exercise, and if need be, seek help. From loved ones, from people you trust, from clergy people, from not so much Facebook or LinkedIn, and yes, from other professionals. Puedes sacar el slide, por favor, Oscar. So, anything to add to that? We're going to look at staying healthy. That's the next slide. Unless you want to wrap it into both those slides or comment on this past one.
Well, on this one, taken in particular, Roy, by recognizing your strengths that you had pointed out, and sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes we're daunted by what's coming up, and we feel overwhelmed, and we awfulize about it. And it's important to look back and realize what challenges have I faced before successfully? What have I gotten through? What adversities have I experienced, managed, and what strengths did I have to do that? Sometimes just remembering that is that, all right, this next one, I'm encouraged. I'll find my way through this as well. And beyond that, mentioning the enjoyable activities, it's so important. Staying positive and being able to sort of develop a go-to list of things that you enjoy. For me, very often it's music. I've talked about that before. I will use music as both lyrics and instrumentals that will be so calming and relaxing to me and create such different moods. But playing games, playing in general, reading, studying, learning something new, these are things that everyone has to kind of develop and continue to revise their go-to list on what helps them to feel better and to cope.
Yeah, it's in a state of evolution all the time.
Yes.
It's changed, so does that change. If you're having difficulty finding enjoyable things and you haven't done your homework, you're stuck somewhere and you're probably engaging in, why bother, and negative thinking and giving up types of thoughts, or you're either traumatized and focused on the past, instead of, again, moving forward. Oscar, por favor, el número 13. So in this slide, taking care of ourselves, again, how we think. We were talking about it again, rational thinking, problem solving, acceptance, not giving up, things that are good for the soul, for the mind, for the, if you have any spiritual belief, or, inside, what works for you internally, prayer, meditation, mindfulness, a whole number of relaxation and calming types of things. Deep breathing, relaxation, and they're very simple. You can count the breaths and just focus on that, or just do simple meditations, using a particular mantra, calm, relax. There's a lot of apps that, again, I'm emphasizing again good nutrition, exercising, stretching, walking within your ability, within your means, whatever you're physically able to do, what the doctor recommends you're able to do. And obviously the things that you're not able to do, don't attempt them. Or if you need assistive devices, make sure that you use assistive devices. Dancing is wonderful for the brain, neurologically, the brain, music too. And make sure if you've been remiss in medical care, go back to your medical care. Again, what is the soul, gratitude, expressions of gratitude, helping others. Like I said, the hands helping, volunteering virtually, feeling love, not just feeling it, but giving it. Religious activities, if you are so inclined, and appreciating nature. I know for many people, like myself, for instance, I know you, Peter. I love flowers. I love the sky. I love to see all these beautiful things of nature, and I know you do too. Puede sacar el slide. Anything to add to that, Peter?
Just Roy, going back to the rational thinking, what I find very often is that people we get into these loops of negative thinking that, it's almost like it twirls around in our heads, and it's hard to get out of. One way people can use is to write, whether through journaling or just writing thoughts down on a regular basis. There's something magical about how it breaks that cycle of just circulating negative thoughts in your head, getting it down, looking at it, and even challenging it. Maybe finding different ways of thinking about the same issue that allow you a way out. And it's a good habit for people to develop. It's one that's been used for many years by a lot of folks. It's very effective. I encourage people to consider the journal.
The journaling can be context specific. So if you have health issues, it can revolve around that. If you have socialization issues, it can revolve around that. So you can sort of make it more context specific to suit your need. Por favor, 14. So here, it's all about maintaining control. Peter and I, we've emphasized that. Those things that you can, and continuing to paint a picture of your life. So here, the journey, silver lining, and keep in mind that this is something that's not cast in stone, and it evolves. It's a gradual process, all steps. Weigh in on what has changed in your life, what things are in your control. Again, let go of the past, focus on the now, and be forward-minded. Expect up and downs. You're going to have bumps. You're going to have mixed emotions. You're going to have insecurities. That's fine. Don't give up. Don't give up if you slip and fall. Spirituality, again, we focused on that. Compassion, forgiveness, kindness to others, and forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. Puedes sacar ese slide. Peter, anything to add to that?
Well, just on the notion of the point about what things are in your control. Very often, things happen, things change in our lives that are beyond our control. And we feel out of control at those times because we like to be able to feel like we've got control over our lives when often that's an illusion. Often we don't have that control. Very important to remember and to be able to say to yourself, I may not have control, but I do have influence. I can influence, be a strong influencer of the events in my life, and it matters what I do. So how can I respond constructively and usefully to this situation to try to have a positive influence on the outcome, on how things evolve? Doesn't mean I control it. We don't control it, but we can have significant influence, and we want to maximize that.
We can control certain things in the context of that which we don't have control. That does give us some sort of control and readiness. So, for instance, we can't control if it's raining. We can control not going out, not getting wet, not getting into the car and risking maybe an accident if it's raining, taking an umbrella. So those are some certain things we certainly can't control. We can't control if it's cold. You certainly can control putting on a coat. You can control turning on the heater, monitoring how much gas you have left in your oil in your tank. You know, how much oil is left. Those are some of the things that I mean by control. You, even though there are things not in your control, you still can control the thing. And I'll take it a step further as an example. If you're having difficulties at work, you're not getting a raise, or maybe you're working at an employment that if things get slow, you're placed on leave status for a couple of weeks. Nothing prevents you. You can't control that. Nothing prevents you from looking for other kinds of employments or part-time employments or education that you can do, things that you can do to further educate yourself, get a certificate. That's something you can do. And you might be surprised that somehow they don't want to let you go because now you are a more trained or more qualified employee, or altogether you take a plunge and do something else. But you wouldn't do it if you didn't do anything about it. That's what I mean. So, Oscar, por favor, el número 16. So this photo, well, the top photo I think is a little cute anyway. Déjame saber. So this is no, el 16. El 15. Sorry, 15. I jumped. Sorry, Oscar. 15. So here is a photo of yours truly. Yours truly with some stormtroopers. And of course, you know what the stormtroopers are. And you see they got these ray guns or who knows what. And I got some sort of a gun there and I'm pointing it. And a big smile. So, of course, you know, getting ready to face the challenges that lie ahead next year. I don't know what's coming my, but I'm getting ready for the challenge. So I thought I just wanted to throw that in. You know, I was walking somewhat better than I'm walking now, so I'm still facing challenges, but I get a smile when I remember that stormtrooper photo. And underneath, well, season's greetings to all my viewers and felices fiestas. A happy new year. Feliz Año Nuevo. These are some photos that I've taken myself. That's the skating rink at Rockefeller Plaza. That's the RCA, you know, formerly the Rockefeller. And a giant nutcracker over there. Now, these are, they're not copyrighted. They're my own photos. Okay, so it's safe. It's safe. So, Oscar, puede sacar el slide. Anything to comment to me and the stormtroopers or to add to that, Peter?
Do I have to refer to you as Roy Skywalker from now on, or what, is it? Is that a secret title, or can we say that?
Oh, I mean, you know, people they call me Doc, but I don't think that Doc Doc doesn't carry a stormtrooper. So Doc Stormtrooper. But that was having fun. See, now my preparing for this show for today, December 15th, Peter, it involved work. I'm not going to say it didn't. It involved looking at a lot of past programs that I prepared, trying to sort through what was reasonable for me to reuse, recycle, put out fresh stuff, repackaging it, reorganizing it, and coming up with something that I thought that today, December 15, 2022, I could provide the viewers as a gift, as a parting gift from us, the last show of the year. And despite the work and the effort and all of that, it was within my control to figure out what I wanted to put into it. And I know I shared it with you. And I am delighted. I mean, it's a form of joy for me to be able to do this and put it out there for the viewers at this point in time of the year. So it's something that I did, that I derived joy from, and that I will continue to do moving into 2023 with programs on elderly abuse, Peter. I think it's a topic that needs to be addressed. Global and global states terrorism on the rise. We've had many instances. I have two people that are going to be talking about that. One, Legion, who will focus global terrorism. She's traveled all over the place, and she brings a wealth of information, including very brief travels. And my teaching assistant, Nazaline Peralta, is doing a wonderful paper for one of her classes, John College of Criminal Justice, and I really kudos on domestic terrorism. So I'm going to have both of them do a show on that. There are other things to do. I'd like to revisit the area of immigration because it's back in the news again, and there's so many different issues taking place. So these are some of the things to look forward to for me for 2023, Peter. Anything that you're looking forward to besides being a continued guest?
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also in gratitude for the work you've been doing, Roy, with this show. I've spent a lot of years with a great interest in public education, trying to bring topics of psychology to the public. And I think the forum that you've created now over 4.5 years has been wonderful, and maybe reaching people that otherwise would not be exposed to these kinds of topics and ideas. So continue on, my friend.
Well, thank you, Peter, for what it's worth. The last show that I did, which was focusing on suicide, I had three grad student guests. I guess you know that. Delphi and two from John Jay, were two students of mine also.
Yeah.
And I mentioned then, I'll re-say it now, but if in my show, that particular show, I was able to in some way reach out to somebody and rescue somebody who might have been thinking.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Even one, it made it worth it for me. And
Beautiful.
I'll say, able to have a single viewer be safe during the holiday travels, and have safe passage wherever he or she may go, and safe haven. Even one person alone makes it worth it to me. I'm not going to know, but I don't care. I'm going to keep doing as many as I can. Oscar, por favor, número 16. These are the reasons I leave you with. So here, I'm on the left, Dr. Canaris on the right. New York State, that's how to reach him. You have me on the left. New York State Psychological Association, I gave you their address and phone number. They're a wonderful association under the American Psychological Association, just beneath that, which is responsible for all the states and provinces. Suffolk County Psychological Association and I are members of it. It's our region. And for its relatively small, it's wonderful. They do like almost weekly seminars and trainings and who knows what. And it's incredible the types of things that they do and put out there. Westchester, I developed a good relationship with Westchester when I started doing shows, school psych, and some of the things that were taking place in this Peter Faustine. And here are the regional associations. There are many. It's not just Westchester. There's Rochester. There's quite a few. Buffalo. I'm not going to mention them all, but there's quite a few. Brooklyn, there's Queens, Manhattan. So that particular link provides them all. Okay. Puedes sacar el slide. So, my dear viewers, we're reaching the end. Don Oscar, una despedida para los televidentes and for our viewers. So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year from the heart. That you all have a wonderful time. Peter, parting words of wisdom and or comments.
Well, I wish everyone listening a safe holiday season and a hopeful 2023 as we go ahead, coming out of several pretty tough years in our history. And I'm hopeful that with kindness, 2023 will start things on a better track. And thank you, Roy, for my participation in your show, and I look forward to seeing you down the line.
Well, thank you. You've always been a dear. Well, not always, but for many years. you've been a dear.
20 plus.
So, sort of like, you're, if I had to characterize you in any way, you're the brother I never had.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate your intellect, your ability, your humanity, your kindness, your how soft-spoken and considerate you are. It's difficult to find all of that rolled into a single person. So thank you for that. And thank you for your willing assistance. Again, to my viewers, season's greetings, felices fiestas, happy new year, feliz año nuevo. I hope that all of you appreciate that, like at no point am I really trying to lecture anybody. I'm trying to provide tools and information for your safety. Why? Because I care about you. You're my extended family, okay? We've become a TV show to my extended family. And I want you to be okay. I want you to be safe. I want you to be healthy and happy. So please take care of yourselves, your family, your loved ones, your neighbors. Do be careful. Keep your wits about you this time of the year. I hope that I gave you with Peter enough information that if you take screenshots, that you put some awareness, so that you are safe and you have a wonderful rest of this year before we move into 2023, and that you have some idea that although there's still a lot of uncertainties next year, we'll try to work through them together. I'll be around and I'll try to help my viewers work through these together along with Peter and other guests. Oscar, gracias por ser un querido componente de este show. Oscar, thank you so much for being the producer. Emilio, thank you for your confidence in me 4 years, 4 months ago in wanting to prepare this show. Muchas gracias, Emilio, y gracias, Ezequiel, for all the wonderful promos that you put. Muchas gracias, Ezequiel. And with that, I bid you all farewell. Good night, be safe, and catch you all next year. Hasta 2023. Buenas noches.